Hello there, and welcome back to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, international football, and sometimes MLS because we're Americans. This week, Arsenal, in addition to winning the Premier League title, played our last two Premier League matches of the season, home against Burnley, and then at Selhurst Park to wrap up the season against Crystal Palace. Hello, Keith.
I almost thought for a moment you were going to get to mention that this show was about the Premier League champions, Arsenal Football Club. It's been quite a 10 days. It's gonna be weird. We're gonna go back and talk about a game that was last Monday. We're recording this on Wednesday evening.
I know.
To be said, 10 days after that game.
Yeah, our schedules were weird, but yeah, I mean it feels like so much longer than that. It's just like last week when I was talking about the West Ham match. I forget which one it even was, but it felt like it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was just the week before. Like, time is weird right now.
It's we went last Tuesday afternoon. It just changed everything. And given the way the weekend played out, I feel much better about how that played out than if I had tried to watch the game live. But had to watch if I needed to watch the Palace game live. But we can talk about
that. Yeah, no, it was interesting how we won in between our two last matches. So yeah, that was strange. And for anyone who happened to miss it for any reason, you can find our in between episode from last week, our celebratory Arsenal are Champions episode. We called it North London Forever. That was a fun celebration. Me and you just basking in the glow of what it feels like to be champions again. By way of follow-up, beyond that, going back to our last real episode, full episode, I should say. It was not an illusion. It was very real. We talked about the new 25-26 home kit, which is now on its way to me with the Champions 26 on the back. So that's exciting. It's also exciting for me because I've been wanting to try the authentic jersey, like the more athletic fit, the real fabric, like the actual jersey that the players use. But I also always get my jerseys customized. And so when you buy it from Arsenal Direct, if you customize it, you can't return it. And I've been afraid to venture outside my comfort zone and try something that might not fit, because then I don't want to have to sell it on eBay, basically. But this one isn't customized. This is just ordered stock off the site. So if it doesn't work out, I just return it and get the next size up, so that'll be fun. But
I'd say I didn't actually notice that it was next year's design on those Champions kits. I didn't even really think about it, but
I'm pretty sure.
No, it is. I'm looking at it now. Just
okay, good.
Confirm that, and I just hadn't even occurred to me, which I guess kind of makes sense because they're not making this year's anymore. So.
Well, you say that, but the funny thing is, so first of all, I was going to check if you didn't, because I just want to make sure, like, I'm not going to buy a second of this season's jersey, even with the champion stuff on it. But if you notice, when they lifted the trophy, they were wearing the Champions 26 jerseys, but it was this year's design. And that probably comes down to some agreement with Visit Rwanda, which I know they've changed the shirt sleeve sponsors. Mm-hmm. And that could also be, I wonder actually, if that's why they didn't end up wearing those jerseys in the last home match of a season like they have in the past too, is because the sponsorship change, possibly. I'm not sure.
I mean, it's not the craziest thing, but I think that's probably also built into some of those contracts. My suspicion is it was more when we talk about the league rules that gets associated with it, which I don't know. Everyone sounds like her. I think it was more just a good luck thing. Players are extraordinarily superstitious about these sorts of things.
That makes sense. But so the follow-up that I'm finally now getting to was, as I was putting together all the visuals of the new kit to go along with our segment talking about it last week, I noticed the socks, which I hadn't really paid attention to while we were first doing our impressions of the kit, now that it's final and, we're able to see all the official marketing photos and stuff. But the socks are weird. They're like two tones, and it's kind of like a dark burgundy in the middle, which does pick up the accent from the other stripes, like the outer stripes. The middle stripe is the bright red. The outer ones are a dark burgundy. But it's weird. There's like a seam in between it. Have you seen socks in that style before? It kind of looks more like a Santa hat or like elf socks or something. I don't know.
I mean, honestly, I don't really pay much attention to socks insofar as have I seen this before? Probably. And not really thought much about it. I will say, though, as I look at it, as I see up close, so as someone who played Rec League, Youth League way back when, of course, the soccer socks are extremely long. So they come like all the way, like halfway up your thigh if you pull them long enough. And then what you do is you fold over the top so that they come down to basically cover right below your knees. And this looks like, as I look at them, that's what it looks like it's meant to do. So I wonder if it's one of those, the interior of the sock is actually, it's got the burgundy, maroon, whatever you want to call it, trim at the top. And then it's the interior of the sock is white. And so you roll it down and that's what you'll see.
Yeah, that's certainly what it's meant to evoke. It's meant to look like that. I guess chances are my son will probably end up with this home kit because he doesn't have a home kit right now. He grew out of his 24-25 home kit, and then the kits that he got for the season were the one that you're wearing and the blue and red change kit. So he's due for a home kit. So and he always gets the socks because I do have him wear those. Although I don't have him wear them at practices because the turf gets all over, like embedded in the fabric, and so he just wears his black practice socks for practices. But yeah, so I will report back once I see what they actually look like. It's interesting. Mm-hmm. The next thing, so you shared in our special episode, you shared a few different links. Two of them were to The Athletic and one was to ESPN. And I just definitely want to encourage everyone to read those. The first one was an Amy Lawrence article. Really, really worthwhile reading. The one thing I didn't really think about, it didn't put it in, I hadn't seen it in the same perspective before, but wanted to check with you. It sounded like Arteta went from playing for Arsenal to coaching and then managing them with only like a few years in between. Like it was very close. And that seems unusual. I mean, first of all, it really underscores just how young of a head coach and then manager he is. And is it typical for someone to get into coaching that soon after retiring, especially coaching a high-profile club? Like he was at Manchester City, I guess, probably immediately after, and then before very long moved to Arsenal in a more executive capacity, like higher up. How typical is that? It seems unusual.
I mean, it is a little bit unusual. Remember, there are only 20 of these jobs, Premier League manager. There's only 20 of them at any year, so they're obviously very hard to come by overall. Arteta's one of those guys who, and a lot of players, some of them, they do better at this, thinking about their post-playing career, right? What are they going to do afterwards? So there are some of them, and there's been a couple in Arsenal over the last few years who go through the coaching courses while they're still playing. And so as soon as they finish playing, whether by their choice or sort of a realization about what's available to them as a player, they'll try to get in right away to be an assistant manager. Now, Arteta had some connections, I think, with Pep. So he was brought in as an assistant. And this is a name that had been bandied around in a couple of contexts already as a potential head man. And I think, he was the other name being thrown out there when they hired Unai Emery after Wenger's retirement. So there's a chance he's the Arsenal manager a year and a half before he actually is the Arsenal manager. Right. Which I think it worked out better for both him and Arsenal that there was some of that extra time between then. But in terms of the gap, it's interesting insofar as how quickly he went from playing to managing. But I mean, in some ways, in some ways, it kind of depends. In some ways, at a higher level, it's actually a little bit easier because the players are so much better. And any coach will tell you, I was a much better coach when I had better players. Like the talent of the roster matters a lot. I mean, Frank Lampard has gone around. He's bounced around a little bit. Just took Coventry City back up. There's been a couple others who have kind of, Vincent Kompany has not been out very long, and now he's, rolling up goals and titles with Bayern Munich. So it's hard to say there's a particular story about how these sorts of things play out. I mean, we could easily go back, look at, Alex Ferguson, had to win the Scottish Premier League with Aberdeen. before he wound up getting the Manchester United job. Arsene Wenger was in Japan and had spent some time in France before that, before, coming to Arsenal. So, Jose Mourinho was at Porto in Portugal before going to Chelsea. So I think Klopp, where was Klopp? Klopp was at Dortmund in Germany. He may have been in another German club before that one. But, so there's no one pathway to get to this kind of position. And
it makes me think with how short it was, they almost had to have been talking about it with him while he was still playing. Like, hey, you may be toward the end of your career. Do you think it's something you might want to do? Like, I don't know. I from my recent history with Arsenal, I could imagine like someone like Jorginho seems like he may have a head for managing or something, like someone who's kind of more cerebral into the game, like at that level, it seems like,
I believe Jorginho is one of those people who's done that. I think Mikel Merino, is doing it. I think Xhaka may have done it as well. There's a few of those guys. Big surprise, central midfielders tend to do this sort of thing, which makes sense given where they're positioned on the field and how they, adjust and all of that. It's hard to say because when he ends his career, Arsene Wenger is still there. And it was, almost until he went. And there was obviously a lot of fan-driven conversation, but almost right up until he went, it was very, very difficult to fathom Arsene Wenger not managing Arsenal. And and Arteta has always spoken very well of Arsenal, his desire to come to the club, even when he was a player. He kind of pushed, in some ways, he kind of pushed his own arrival to the club from Everton. Right. And obviously that was driven by, and I think Amy Lawrence talked about the 8-2 loss to United and him coming with Premier to soccer. It's hard to say there's a particular. I don't think anybody had the direct conversations. Hey, you think you'd want to come back here someday? But he certainly had to have spend the time at City. Certainly it's one thing to say, oh, this guy might have the chops for management, but then you kind of put him into these positions and make them do these kinds of things. And
right,
some people are cut out for it, some people aren't, and so I think he had to kind of go through that sort of apprenticeship a little bit because Arsenal needed some. Yeah. And all those pieces kind of talk about this. Arsenal needed some serious work when he took over. This club was a mess when he came in.
Well, so let's talk about that a little bit. So the last article that you shared was going into detail on the 5-phase plan that I guess Edu kind of started, and then once Arteta came in, they collaborated and, kind of came to a revised 5-phase plan. Although who knows, even we're talking about the end, maybe it's more than a 5-phase plan. Maybe we're in phase 6 now. But so there are a couple things that were noteworthy to me about this, like just thinking about it, and especially from the perspective now of seeing other teams and other sports and other leagues going through different areas around rebuilding. The idea of releasing all of your best players and how they talked about basically needing to buy out the contracts of these expensive players that weren't close to the end. Like, that is gutsy. And I wanted to compare that or contrast it with like the Chicago Bulls, who I've been following, who are definitely a mess, I don't know that they're toxic. I don't know that they're quite as bad as Arsenal had gotten as far as aside from their on the court performance. But like in the at the transfer window, like they say with American sports, at the transfer deadline, that's what I meant to say. At the transfer deadline, they made like 7 trades, and they were almost all like, first team, second team players, like just almost complete turnover. But the idea of trading seems like that makes that a lot more plausible, where it's not like you have a contract and you need to buy them out. Like the idea of trading in a closed system makes it possibly easier to rebuild a team from ground zero. Like, is that right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's the ability to make the player trades. It's also things like the draft, because if you start jettisoning a lot of your good players, there's a world where you turn into Spurs, where you're talking about potentially getting relegated. Now, obviously, Spurs have a lot of other issues going on, in terms of their own squad management, in terms of injuries as well. That plays a role in it. But, it's a gutsy move, but it's also the kind of thing that at a certain point you kind of have to be honest with yourself and say, look, this group of players we have, for all their skill and for all their ability, what have we actually done with them?
Right.
And especially with Arteta coming in, and I think really the two that you point to in this are Mesut Ozil and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who are both were both very good players on their day. In the case of Aubameyang, was still a pretty good player when he left, but both of them in various ways were not really commanding much in the way of like transfer. Like if you could sell them, that'd be ideal, but people aren't offering you money for them. Does it benefit you to sell low? And what does that do to your reputation as a club? The other side of that too is that both of them in various ways were not going to be an effective part of the culture that Arteta wanted to create. And that's kind of the concern.
That was made very clear in the documentary.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the environment, like we talk about those kinds of things. Like that's the kind of stuff you'll almost never see or hear about till after the fact. Or it's really kind of hard to see. And it does make some of the other player decisions they made in those stretches. I'm thinking David Luiz. Now, don't get me wrong. David Luiz was actually even still toward the end of his career with Arsenal, still a decent player, but also had a lot of brain fart moments, a lot of really terrible bad mistakes, bad red cards.
Mm-hmm.
But also he was largely a positive influence on a lot of players. He was generally had a good attitude. He did work hard, even if it didn't always reflect on the field, but you can sort of see why someone like Arteta looks at him and says, I'm okay with him being here, knowing that he's not going to be a part of this team when we actually win things. Like talent-wise, right. I mean, it kind of brings you to a player like Christian Norgard, who by all accounts has been the consummate professional behind the scenes, even though he hasn't really played much at all. Yeah. Same with Kepa too. Like they kind of get where they are in their careers and what's expected of them. And they're going to kind of take it in stride. They're still going to practice hard. They're still going to try their best to push their way into the team, but they're not, they don't get picked to start a game and they're not going to mope around. They're not going to complain. They're not going to, cause a disturbance or try to play mind games with the younger players. They're there in part to sort of set the tone and show them like, this is what a professional looks like. I mean, we forget sometimes how young a lot of these players still are.
Oh yeah.
Like there's something to that, to having, I think about any workplace you're in, you need some of those older, more professional people out there to sort of act and say, this is the way we do things around.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't necessarily have to, it doesn't have to necessarily be the Arsenal way. This is just the way a professional acts, regardless where they come from.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was funny. A couple matches ago, my son was asking me who the oldest player for Arsenal was because he was surprised by how young some of them are. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, do you know offhand who the two oldest players for Arsenal are? If you were to guess.
Oh, gosh, not off the top of my head.
I'll give you the hint. One of them, my son already thought was the oldest player because of the color of his hair.
Gosh, I'm trying to think. Trossard? Is it Trossard?
Yeah. Trossard. Okay. So Trossard at 31 is the oldest player on the squad, which is crazy, right? Christian Norgard is like right behind him. I forget if he's 29 or 30, but around there in age. I mean, that is a very, very young squad, like all in their teens and 20s, basically. So,
although we should point out, I mean, Raya's 30 and Kepa's 31. Now, keepers are on a totally different timetable.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, Saliba's 25, Gabriel's 28. Timber and Calafiori are 24. Even Ez is only 27.
Yeah. I think Rice is about 27. Yeah.
Saka is 24. Good Lord.
Yeah, I know.
And then 16-year-old Max Dowman. I mean, really. It's a young team, and they kind of need that.
Yep. Well, so that brings me to phase 4 of Arsenal's plan, which was get Declan Rice. I laughed when I saw that was phase 4. I mean, just like, and I don't know that it was necessarily called that, but I get what they're saying. Like they want a player like him. Mm-hmm. And it definitely sounded like at a certain point it became, no, it is definitely him. And they were saying like, whatever price we have to pay to West Ham, we're getting him. And oh boy, did that work out well for him, given recent events with West Ham.
Well, I mean, as you well know, we got him half price. So, He just fit a very particular need for the club. He fit a very particular position and was obviously doing so at a very high level. I think the fact that West Ham end up winning the Conference League that year, I think kind of put a bow on it. There's actually a clip they showed where Rice, he still has a connection to that club. Like he got the news. There's a picture you can see he gets the news that they've been relegated, and he's not devastated, obviously, but you can tell it still kind of bothers him a little. He still has some warm feelings for them, but obviously it was the right time for him to move on, and he's been just, someone said he's an 8 out of 10 every week. Like he is one of their central players.
Right.
Just an Energizer Bunny. It just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah, no, it's it was interesting. I definitely recommend both of those articles, the Amy Lawrence one and the 5-phase plan one, for anyone who's interested. It was they're both interesting reads. So thanks for sharing those. Well, we'll begin our news segment with something that is hopefully not news to anyone watching this. Arsenal are champions. We'll say it as often as we can for as long as we can. But I guess along with that comes a parade, right?
Yes. On Sunday, the 31st, Arsenal will be having a parade, 2 p.m. London time. Adjust your own personal clock accordingly. They'll be having a parade through North London. The map wasn't entirely clear. It looks like they're just doing a giant loop around North London, but I can't really get a good sense of a starting or ending point, at least on the map. Maybe if I look a little more closely. I assume the Emirates is part of that, though, so that's probably where it ends up. But they'll have the parade. For those of you who, like me, will not be in North London on Sunday, it will be streamed through the website, through the app, on YouTube, on various other platforms that the club has access to. So just kind of, it'll be very interesting. Obviously, regardless of what happens Saturday, this is a season worth celebrating, Premier League champions. But there is a chance there's a second trophy that's going to make an appearance on Sunday. So that obviously just adds to the atmosphere of the whole thing. But yes, parade coming on Sunday. So, enjoy it, Gooners, regardless what happens on Saturday. Enjoy the celebration to come on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm looking at the parade route. I do wonder, I know how close Spurs Stadium is to the Emirates. Are they going to circle around Spurs Stadium just to kind of rub it in? It doesn't look like
No, there's no need. There's no need for that. Holding the trophy is quite enough. If we're doing that, then the parade would basically make a giant loop around all of England. Because boy, we've got receipts. That's all I'm going to say.
Now that you bring it up, maybe that's deserved. So one thing that I wanted to bring to the show this week, there was a bunch of wrap up type articles happening. I think this particular one was between the Burnley and Crystal Palace matches. So Crystal Palace hadn't happened yet, but this was from what was this? This is an ESPN article. This was written by Ryan O'Hanlon, and he just kind of went over a bunch of key stats that he feels kind of tell the story of Arsenal's Premier League season. It's interesting for anyone who's a stats person interested in looking at that. There were a few that I wanted to call out. So the first one is across the season, we conceded 27 in XG, which is super, super low. Now, we actually conceded 27 real goals, which I guess says something about XG as far as how accurate it may or may not be. But I mean, it's nuts. I'll try and put the chart in. But basically, we conceded about 27, and then the next lowest was Manchester City with 43. That's how much better our defense is than the next closest competitor, and it's all up from there. Burnley with the highest at almost 73 XG conceded. But so that was cool, and along the same lines, they talked about great chances conceded, which I guess are XG events over 0.33. So when you're at least a third likely to score from it. So we only conceded 15 of those over the season. Our next closest competitor, interestingly, was Brighton. But again, like they had 29. We had half as many conceded as them. So yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it's an interesting stat to look at when you see it in an aggregate rather than just like for any individual game or something.
Right, and that's kind of the point. Like we look at those stats like XG, and we see how many times teams over underperform those. And honestly, to me, it's crazy to see how close our actual goals conceded is to our expected goals. Because because we can all point to various individual instances. Take the goals we conceded against Manchester United in that loss. Those were pretty low XG events, and they all turned into goals. On the other hand, take the save Raya had on Fernandes right in the end of the West Ham game. That was a very high XG opportunity, and it got nothing out of it. So, right. And an individual moment, they don't tell you much. But as you start to stretch out towards the aggregate, and again, everyone calculates these things just a little bit differently. So you go to different sites, and they have different numbers. I mean, take Man City's 43 expected goals allowed. On the season, they conceded 35. So you could argue that they actually slightly overperformed their XG defensively. Right. And just quickly looking at the 13, Manchester United conceded 50 goals on the season. Where are they on the list? Their XG is 48, so close.
Yeah.
And then the freaking Burnley, 72.
73, 72.95. It's practically 73.
And they conceded 75. So as you start to stretch out over the course of the season, you can start to see that. And there's generally going to be a fair amount of correlation between results and goal difference, although it's kind of interesting to sort of look their way through. You can see Sunderland finished -6 on goal difference and finished 7th. Whereas Chelsea was +6 and finished 10th. So, the league was very bunched together, and you're going to see a lot of that in terms of the analysis of the league this season. And you can look and go 85 points. That doesn't feel like a lot. I mean, yeah, but we don't have the kind of City and Liverpool, even Arsenal from 2 years ago, those kind of teams that were breaking 90 points. Like, that's unusual. And so 85 is a pretty solid haul. I mean, we only lost 5 times all season. Which is just incredible. And yeah, the defense is the spine of it. And it obviously draws a lot of punditry, handbrake on, and, set pieces only, dour, defensive, boring, physical. But, I mean, part of it is, and I think this was, the quote was attributed to Harry Maguire, but I've heard it in other contexts, it is just so hard to score against Arsenal. Like it is just this kind of superlative effort it takes to create one of those opportunities. And I think some of those numbers in the aggregate, we beat City by 7 points. In the end, it wasn't really that close.
Yeah. So you wonder, and I don't think they'd ever admit this, but you wonder to what extent they just kind of gave up after the Bournemouth draw. Like, okay, whatever.
I mean, it's kind of interesting, and we'll talk a little bit about it. Like, the draw to Bournemouth. At that point, they only have the one game left, which is the Villa game. But of course, it was also a home game with the final game for their famed manager. Do we want to just talk about that now?
Yeah, may as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was announced. I mean, look, we talked about this back in December. So this isn't exactly news. This has been a rumor that's been floating around for at least half the season, if not longer. Pep Guardiola will no longer be the manager of Manchester City as of the end of this season. He is not retiring, although he's probably certainly made more than enough money that he could pretty easily. But it's stepping away from Manchester City. I don't believe they've officially announced that it'll be Enzo Maresca, but I thoroughly expect it'll be Enzo Maresca taking over as manager there at the start of next season. It's kind of wild. I mean, how long he'd been at City for 10 years, which is a fair amount of time, but kind of interesting that he makes the choice to step away. There's some speculation this may be connected to a ruling connected to the 115 charges against Manchester City. Of course, we don't know that. Of course, that case came in, 3 years ago, and we still haven't heard anything. So who the hell knows? What comes first, a verdict in the decision or the heat death of the universe? Stay tuned. yeah, it's a fascinating change. It's interesting that story popped up right on halftime of the Burnley game on Monday, and of course I'm watching not my usual place, but I was watching in a different bar. But of course, in the bar setting, you can't hear the commentary quite as well. But every time you got some commentary popping up, it was commentary about Pep, and it was a little like, wait a minute, we're playing a game here right now.
Yeah.
Choking the life out of Burnley, but still. But yeah, it is really something that is the end of the line for Pep. It really kind of makes that last Villa game for them kind of interesting. It's Pep's final game. It's final game for Bernardo Silva. Sounds like Rodri. No, I think he's still playing. But like it's a time of transition for Manchester City, and it's kind of interesting that they wouldn't. I mean, honestly, I'd peg that one as their win all along, even when the title was still potentially on the line. I just kind of figured Villa would go nowhere, given they'd be coming off of their European final.
Right.
But no, apparently not. Apparently they go out and beat Manchester City in the final day, which is kind of fascinating.
What strikes me, we're talking about Pep leaving and those other players, right? This seems to be very prescient on Arsenal's part. That was one of the things they talked about with that 5-phase plan, was getting the ball rolling 6 or 7 years ago when they did with Arteta, because they saw that there was going to be this opportunity with Manchester City and Liverpool waning. And it looks like the prophecy may be coming to fruition, where this could be the beginning of a boom for us, where if we're able to hold on and keep the players we have and maybe fortify a couple weak spots and build a little more depth, this could be the beginning of, a dynasty like what City has had,
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, and there's been a little bit of that sort of, who's the favorite for next year already. And it's hard right now, obviously, absence, the full summer transfer and obviously all the World Cup stuff. City's going through transition. Liverpool's still going through transition. Chelsea's obviously going through various transitions. Manchester United's going through their Spurs wishes they could have a transition right now. Then there's the other clubs, the Bournemouths, the Brentfords, Brightons, all the Bees. I mean, even an Aston Villa or a Newcastle. Who's really the main challenger right now? Arsenal, one thing, and this was talked about even 4 or 5 years ago when this was getting started, Arsenal was gathering players who were all going to be in sort of that peak, athletic peak that we talk about their ages, right? 24 to 28. Who were all going to be reaching that moment at about the same time. And kind of, it was always a sense we were going to be a little bit chronologically behind where Liverpool and City were going to be. City's an interesting one because they just went, think about in January, they just went and bought Antoine Semenyo and Mark Gahey just like that. Like, what are you going to do about that? But Liverpool, made a conscious choice to hold on to some of these players, Van Dijk, Konaté, Salah, and kind of squeezed every last ounce they could out of them. And now they're kind of left, they underwent a massive attempt at transition last summer. And for various reasons, it didn't quite work out. Now, I don't think they're a lost cause. I think there's a lot of talent on that team and a couple of good moves, and they could be right there too. But, they kind of got to prove that, don't they?
Right.
Yeah, we might be in a phase right now, but we're kind of we're playing the role of the big dog. And again, who knows psychologically how much it helps us that we actually did do the job this season. I mean, where is this club psychologically if we don't win the league? And now we're on 4 years, maybe coming in second. I mean, that's, you start to ask those questions, right? Can you actually win the league? And that's, So in a sense, like to be able to do it when we did this year, it does kind of open up those opportunities and kind of acts as the proof of concept to a lot of those things they were talking about. Yeah, this team has always been good for the last few years. Anyone who doesn't want, says Arsenal's not that good over the last couple of years does not know what they're talking about. They're either a fool or it's just banter. It's just noise.
Willfully ignorant.
But there is a thin but very obvious line between being a good team, a great team even, and being a champion. Like that is in some ways the hardest step to take. And so who knows? I mean, with some other clubs in transition, with the core of players we have, we might be looking at that kind of thing. And we might be in a place where that's it. But obviously, a lot of things can happen between now and even the start of next season, this time next year. Who knows? But yeah, it's hard not to feel good about where we are coming into all of that. And Pep leaving, I mean, you couldn't necessarily have you certainly wouldn't have predicted that 5 years ago. But at the same time, I mean, he doesn't, 10 years is both a long time and not very long time. He's not Alex Ferguson. He's not Arsene Wenger. He's not going to spend 20 plus years at a club. Nobody does that anymore.
Right. So talking about Arsenal's season and kind of how things have shaken up, you shared an article with me about did we want to be as strong defensively as we are, or at least comparative or relative to our offense? And maybe that wasn't entirely on purpose. Well, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and so this was a Michael Cox piece from The Athletic from yesterday. Headline: Arsenal haven't been defensive this season. They just haven't been as good in attack as they hoped. Which is kind of a wordy way to just sort of say a lot of things we've been saying all season. How much of this, and I know Arteta gets a lot of criticism, and look, I think there have been moments where we've looked a little stolid offensively, haven't quite really pushed on or been as aggressive as you might like, but it talks a little bit about the tactical changes that Arsenal's been facing, but also just we talk about the injuries, right? Burnley was the first game this season where we got to start Odegaard, Havertz, Eze, and Saka all at the same time. I mean, if those are supposed to be your best 4 offensive players, we got 1 game in the league out of them. 1.
Yeah.
That's obviously going to have an impact on, what you're on how you play. And, in a sense, it's sort of nice to see that now. Obviously, I think winning the league had a little bit to do with that kind of change in tone from some people. But yeah, I think it also speaks as well. Like, our leading scorer was Gyökeres, who had a nice season, but nobody thinks he was particularly great. You could argue that the Arsenal team that ended 2 years ago, and I think Cox makes this point, or someone did. I've read a lot of pieces about this over the last week. So, yeah, I mean, you look at the team they had a couple years ago, the one that took City down to the final day. I mean, it's perfectly reasonable, fair point to make that team might have been better than this one, given the way they closed the season, not just coming 2 points in, but I mean, we remember the way they were just ripping teams apart in January, February, into March. That, like, in a sense, how does Arteta want Arsenal to play? I think that's what he wants.
Well, right.
I think what we got was kind of making the most of what we had, which, to be fair, was a lot and was very good. Like, this isn't some plucky underdog story. This is a very good team coming good. But
well, I think also part of it has to be, though, how Arsenal is built from the ground up on defense. Like, everything else is on top of that. Every player from the back all the way to the front has some defensive responsibility. They are expected to track back and always be on defense when not in possession, like 100% of the time, which that has to contribute. Like, even when we don't have our best players, the players who we have are going to be, even if they're not productive as far as our own goals, they're going to be defensive, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you talk about the spine of the team up the middle, but also just take a look at the conversation surrounding players of the players of the year or team of the year. Who are the names that keep getting thrown out on like a Premier League team of the year from Arsenal? It's David Raya, it's William Saliba, Gabriel, and Declan Rice. Now, a lot of that has to do with the injuries up top. It's not, no one is going to pick Gyökeres, but I mean, Kai Havertz just didn't play enough. Odegaard was in and out with injuries. Saka was in and out with injuries, and clearly, even when he was playing, was not at 100%. Like, that offensive talent just wasn't playing particularly well, or wasn't able to play in a lot of cases. Where was the strength of the team? The keeper, central defense, and then a Declan Rice in the midfield. That was the consistent metric of the consistent part of the team. To a lesser extent, Jury and Timber, and I say only lesser extent because obviously we haven't seen him for a while now, unfortunately.
Right.
But obviously Timber is a big part of that as well. So, like, I think it's a way to think about that as well. The defense is the foundation of this team, and we kind of pushed forward from that. And look, the old line is that defense wins championships. Now, I don't think you necessarily need to be great defensively to do it. I mean, look at Liverpool last year; they were a little soft in the back at points, but they scored enough goals; it didn't matter.
Right.
You got to be true to yourself in a lot of ways, and I think that's sort of our identity. We enjoy the 1-0 to the Arsenal and the callback to the George Graham days. And that's fun because it makes everybody mad and all of that. But also, I don't think that's ultimately what we want. I just think that was the best way to get where we wanted to be with what we had.
Yeah. No, that all adds up. I can see that. How has the rest of the league changed around Arsenal? Like, we have a very Arsenal strong focus on the show most of the time. But how does the rest of the league compare in that regard as far as tactics and stuff?
So this is another piece we'll throw out there. This is John McKenzie writing about tactics. It's called "Did You Notice the Premier League Has Changed?" Sort of an overview of the season. He makes a couple points about the way teams are playing. Possession has become less controlling. I'm just going to read the headlines here. The way teams possess the ball has changed. Just scrolling through the piece. Where's the third one? The way teams attack has changed. And then there was a fourth one, I believe. The way teams defend is changing again. And he sort of talks about how things have changed in terms of where teams are applying their strength. And Arsenal is a part of this story. I think part of the larger story is that Arsenal is driving these tactical changes. It's kind of nice to read a tactics article that isn't like, oh, it's all set pieces. No, it's not. There's a lot of interesting things about where teams are setting themselves up. He talks a lot about the high block that we saw from City at Wembley in the Carabao Cup and how we saw other teams doing that. And obviously, the different moving between zonal marking, sort of more defending spaces versus a man-to-man marking, which you're seeing also in some other places. Where teams are attempting to pressure each other, at their height under Pep, Manchester City was about possession, sort of the Spanish tiki-taka of the 2010s, right? Control the ball, control the game, squeeze the life out of it. And we're kind of moving in a different direction there. And in England, in the Premier League game is being played differently in that. And I think it's really kind of a nice sort of interesting look at the league as a whole. Obviously, Arsenal is an important part of this, what they're doing, but also that it's, there's a lot of other things that are happening sort of beneath that kind of surface analysis, of which Arsenal is a part of, but not always necessarily because they've changed the game. That's kind of a lot of times there's conversations about like how the champion sort of sets the tone, and now it's a copycat league, right? Everyone wants to do what the champs are doing, and I think his article rightly points out that's not really what's going on here or what's likely to go on.
Right. Yeah, that's all fair. I'll read that as soon as I can. Looks interesting. Lastly, before we exit the news section, World Cup is just around the corner, and countries all over the world are announcing their squads. How is Arsenal doing as far as their ranks?
So as of today, Wednesday, with the announcement of the Netherlands squad, there are 15 Arsenal players set to go to come to America for the 2026 World Cup this summer. Quickly, Gabriel Magalhaes and Gabriel Martinelli will both be there for Brazil. Kai Havertz for Germany. Jurrien Timber for the Netherlands. Victor Gyökeres for Sweden. Leandro Trossard for Belgium. For Spain, David Raya, Mikel Merino, and Martin Zubimendi. William Saliba with France. Martin Odegaard with Norway, and then there are 4 English players tied for the most on the team, the English squad. Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, Eberechi Eze, and Noni Madueke are all going to be going to the World Cup this summer.
So our entire first team, and then a few others, basically.
Well, yeah. I'm just looking through. Has Ecuador announced there's Ecuador is in the World Cup, right? Nope, this is Ecuador, the country. Sorry. Hold on. I know. Gonna do this live.
So, as far as some historical perspective, like if we go back 4 years before Arsenal was as good as they are now, and we're just kind of beginning this rebuild, How many would you expect to see playing internationally in the World Cup?
It's kind of a mix. I recall, I think gosh, and now I'm going to make me go back and look up numbers on this. I feel like this is obviously a little bit higher than we've had in recent times. And again, some of these are kind of interesting cases. Take a look at Riccardo Calafiori. He would definitely be going, except Italy didn't make it. Christian Norgard definitely be going, except Denmark didn't make it. Jakob Kivior, who's technically still an Arsenal player, although he's officially now somewhere else. But I mean, he would go with Poland if they were making it.
Right.
Oh gosh, I was just looking at someone. Yes, I was looking at Ecuador. Piero Hincapié. Ecuador has not announced their squad yet, but I thoroughly expect Hincapié to be on it. So he'll be 16 players. So it's always kind of an interesting one in this case because Arsenal is definitely stocked with players from England, Brazil, France, Germany. Like you think about where so many of those players are coming from those kind of squads that are going to Spain, they're going to be in the World Cup. And that's a big part of it. I'm vamping apart because I don't quite remember any particular numbers. This is definitely more than we've had in I think probably the last couple. World Cup cycles.
I remember when we've talked about Raya internationally in the past, he has not been Spain's number one. Is he still like Spain's backup keeper, or has he moved up?
Well, we're not really going to know, of course, until until they announce. Let's just take a look at who else they called up. Unai Simon, David Raya, and Joan Garcia. Simon has generally been their starter. I kind of expect him to be between the sticks for Spain when the time comes. I mean, Raya would be a perfect good choice. Joan Garcia is there with Barcelona. I mean, like that wouldn't be a bad choice either. But it'll be interesting to see. Interesting note about the Spanish squad: for the first time ever, there are no Real Madrid players on Spain, which is interesting.
I mean, how many Spanish players does Real Madrid have in the first place? I mean, they have a lot of internationals.
They have a few, but I'm guessing it's not as necessarily Spanish heavy as it typically is. I mean, typically for the longest time, it was Real Madrid and Barcelona made up the Spanish team with a sprinkling of guys from Villarreal, Valencia, Atletico, Bilbao. Let's see if I can get a roster.
But yeah, I mean, when I think of Real Madrid, all the players who I think of are not Spanish.
I mean, let's see. Well, Dean Howson is kind of the defender is kind of the big sort of not there. It's Danny Ceballos, but I feel like he's a little older. Yeah, that's right. Former Arsenal man, Danny Ceballos. Yeah, I mean, like Danny Carvajal has played on the national team, and they have they have a lot of them, but a lot of it's going to be youth players, guys you haven't heard of as much. Yeah, I mean, you look at the key players. Federico Valverde is from Uruguay. Arda Güler is Turkish. Tchouaméni, French. Kylian Mbappe, Camavinga, French. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Jude Bellingham. Rodrigo, Endrick, Vinny Jr., Eder Militao are all Brazilians.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's kind of an interesting quirk of where they are currently that Real doesn't have a lot of Spaniards playing centrally for the side as they have in the past. I did see a couple of former Arsenal players that I did see. Sad Kolasinac will be playing for Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then because the U.S. team it was leaked on Friday, but was officially announced yesterday, Tuesday, Austin Trusty, who was briefly on Arsenal's squad, who's currently now in Celtic in the Scottish Premier League. He will be going with Team USA. So a few, and there's probably some others. Those are just the ones I happen to notice. So there's a few former Gunners lurking about as well.
Yeah. Well, it seems like forever ago now, but we did play Burnley since we last recorded a regularly scheduled non-emergency celebration episode. That was a 1-0 to the Arsenal affair. Largely uneventful, except for a few key things. The first I wanted to call out was our lone goal in that match was from a corner kick, a common occurrence for us, setting the record in the Premier League at 18 corner kicks in a season, only to be surpassed when we played Crystal Palace at the weekend and brought it up to 19.
Yeah, I mean, the set piece thing gets a little overdone, but at the same time, we're obviously really good at it, and those goals count just the same. So just a perfect delivery from Saka, perfect finish from Havertz, and we've talked as well about, kind of the nervousness that creeps in the longer we go without a goal. So to get the goal there late in the first half and be able to walk in at that point, to walk into halftime at 1-0 was a big boost, and it's just kind of a perfect example of the art. Saka with a delivery that's near perfect. Havertz's header goes right where it needs to. Just textbook. So yeah, if in a sense, what ended up being the goal that won the league for us. I mean, what else is more appropriate? Set piece again, all day, all day.
Yeah. So, the next major event to talk about was kind of an incidental thing. Hincapié was driving into the box and fell, was tripped. It's hard to say exactly what caused him to topple over. But in the course of skidding across the pitch, whatever Burnley player was tracking him down, his foot landed between Hincapié's legs, pinching down his shorts and inadvertently pantsing him. For like the first, I didn't see it happen live exactly, but I saw him sitting up with his pants clearly down. I was like, what just happened? And then I wasn't even sure that they would show the replay. It was almost borderline obscene to even show it in slow motion the way that they did. But when they show in slow motion, it's like, oh, that's how that happens.
It felt like one of those. This is going to be a weird comparison, but hear me out. You'll see sometimes where players pick up gruesome injuries and they show the replay the first time going, oh, what happened there? And then it happens. And of course, you're going to go, oh, no, we can't show that. And like, that's it. Won't show it again. This felt like the same thing. Like they ran through the replay, watched it happen and go, oh my God, we're getting fined for this. Yeah, it's a full moon over the Emirates. It's all. They gave it all. Cappy. So one last one I had thought of. So there's a movie from it must have been the mid '90s called The Full Monty, about a group of older English gentlemen who basically, to raise money, essentially do something. I'm butchering the plot here, but essentially do a bit of a striptease for charity.
Right.
And I promise there's a connection here. And one of the scenes where they're practicing and they're basically told, because they have to stay in a straight line as part of the act, and they're basically told, think of the Arsenal back four.
Wow. It's been on my list. Not for that reason, but it's been on my list to watch and just hasn't lined up. But now I definitely want to see it for the Arsenal connection.
So yeah, the full Piero, I guess we could call it now. There, just as a side note, when Hincapié on Sunday was doing the trophy lift, apparently another member of the team stood behind him and pantomimed pulling down his pants.
Oh, I missed that.
You want to guess who that was?
I don't know. I can't think of who would be a little mischievous and cheeky like that. No.
Cheeky. It was Ben White. Of course.
Boy, so that required him kind of bending his knee to get down, I guess, to pants height. Oh boy, that's a little risky, a little bit of a risky foolishness. So yeah, no, I guess that makes sense. It's a little bit of a dark arts on the trophy ceremony. So by far, though, the most controversial thing that happened during this match was some contact between Kai Havertz and I don't remember the name of the Burnley player, but he basically stepped on, what was it, his foot, his Achilles area. It looked pretty bad. Definitely
gets studs into the ankle. I think certainly you could see a red being given. And when they went to the VAR, I was kind of like, crap, that's going to be a red. I do think the mitigating circumstance, as I recall, his leg isn't fully planted, and Havertz doesn't actually get him that flush. He's definitely kind of, it's more of a glancing blow than a full on. But I think it's fair to say there was a little bit of luck involved there on Havertz's part, and the referees not giving that as a red. It definitely was a lot closer than you'd want to see at that stage. It's if anything, it winds up being an interesting coda to the season, because it's worth pointing out that, and we can add the Crystal Palace game in this too, for the entire season, Arsenal did not receive a red card and did not concede a single penalty in the league over 38 games, which is wild.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that was a big part of the All or Nothing documentary, was Granit Xhaka in particular, but that the team had a real red card problem. I mean, I wouldn't say in the few years that I've been watching, I don't think we had a red card problem per se. I think last season we had a couple key ones that really threw a monkey wrench into things, but it wasn't like a systemic, like happening all the time, like real issue in that way.
We had a lot last year. We were up near the top of and really the exception was the 23-24 season, where we didn't pick up a lot, and that was partly how we were able to challenge so late. That's part of what sunk us a little bit last year. And look, we complained plenty about the ridiculousness of the second yellow to Declan Rice or to Trossard. We can certainly nitpick some of the cards we were given, but still, like, it becomes a recurring pattern, and that's been part of the work that the club has been doing, right? How do we cut down on that? And that's what they've done a really good job with, is just keeping themselves out of those situations. I mean, we could point to a couple close calls. We talked about Gabriel and kind of the head-to-head with Haaland, which I think was the right decision. But there are a couple of those, of course, of the season. Now, we could easily turn this the other way and think about the cards we didn't get in our favor. I mean, both of Nick Pope's tackles on Gyökeres. Frankly, late in this game, was it Zion Fleming? I mean, first of all, what a name there. I mean, arguably just as dangerous, if not more so, play where he flings his body into David Raya while he's in midair. I mean, that was bad, yeah. Yeah, that one, he got a yellow for it, but, I mean, let's put it this way. Martin Odegaard went after him, and Martin Odegaard doesn't go after anybody. Like, that was... That, like, you could tell he was not happy with that. And so, you get a little lucky on those, but any team that goes to a seat, any you can always call that, I think, a lot with those. But really, I think it's a credit to this team and their discipline. No reds, no penalties. Even if you want to nitpick one or two of those calls throughout the season, it's still an outstanding turnaround from where this team's been over the last few years, even just in that context. And so I'm glad to see it.
It's also funny, I don't remember any yellows given to any of the teams we played against when they kicked the ball away either. That seemed to have kind of gone away, huh?
There were a couple. There were a couple. I mean, they're not going to stick with your head because they were yellows. They were probably late on, and we were focusing more on defending the lead and stuff. I'll say this.
I remember the ones that weren't given, I guess.
But I'll say this over the larger context of this game, though. Burnley didn't have a shot after the 57th minute.
Right.
Like and look, they were getting relegated long ago. They're not particularly good. This is a game in some ways we controlled. Like, even if we had gone down to 10, you talk about how not a lot exciting happened in this game. Yeah, that was the point. We scored the goal and nothing else had to happen. Obviously, 1-0 always leaves you open to that one play that which we've been caught out on in the past. Not so much this season, but certainly in the past. Well, a couple of times this season, I'm thinking Wolves. But that one goal deficit kind of one goal lead puts you in that position. But we shut this game down, and they really got nothing out of it. And in some ways 1-0 to the Arsenal, and then of course 24 hours later, it was over. It was all over.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good
party
setup
in the streets of London.
Yeah. All right. At the weekend, we wrapped up our season, our Premier League season at least, against Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park. The dog track. And the first thing for me was figuring out where to watch it. I thought I was past this. Either it's on Peacock or I watch it on YouTube TV. I got the sports package for YouTube TV that was supposed to solve all my problems, right? I have it set to record Arsenal matches, and yet I go there and it's not there. And I was incredibly frustrated, ended up watching it on the Telemundo broadcast, like apparently almost all of the country did in America, because the match was on CNBC. And of course, no one in their right mind would include that in a sports package.
Well, no, it's a business channel, so no.
Right. So, yeah, so stupid. How could they not also have it on Peacock? Like, it's just the whole point of having all the extended NBC channels showing these matches is so you can watch all of them live. What the heck?
Yeah, I think honestly the big difference here is the addition of Peacock, because when this deal began, you could stream all of them. I mean, again, the deal with NBC began like a decade plus ago, so the nature of streaming was very different at that point. But
yeah,
I think Peacock, because it has a lot of rights and exclusivity in terms of things are there, like certain things can and can't be on them. We've talked about that. This is really the only time of year this is going to happen, because as we said, in the final week, they try to get as many games on TV as possible. That's why Arsenal, any soccer game is on CNBC, which again, just to repeat, is a business channel. Like they do stock tips and they talk about how the market's doing and all, like that's what they're for. So kind of an odd case. I watched the first half on Telemundo. I was in California. My brother got married on Saturday, which was lovely. And, then of course I had to wake up for an 8:00 kickoff, which California time, which was a little hard to do given the way the previous night had gone. But, I was up for it. And, our high school Spanish, I think, was enough to sort of keep me abreast of what was going on, to the extent that I cared beyond, hey, we're getting a trophy after this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the only word that I needed to hear was "go." I'm not going to hold it as long as they do, but that was fun, and fun for my son, who stayed up late watching the replay with me because it was a holiday the next day, Memorial Day in the U.S. So yeah.
Gol de Arsenal.
So yeah, it was funny noticing some of the things that Arsenal supporters brought with them into the stadium, such as a sign that read Selhurst Park Champions Section. That was fun. There was a couple fans that the camera lingered on for a very long time. Just in case you didn't get it after the first 10 seconds, they held it for another 20. But drinking from plastic water bottles that said that had the Manchester City logo on them, the crest, and the light blue background.
That's a callback. You may have noticed a Manchester City fan drinking from an Arsenal because we the past how we had quote bottled it.
Right.
Yeah. That's. Right. I mean, whatever. It's fun. I did see several people. I did see at least one guy dressed as the Premier League trophy, which was kind of fun. A lot of the
I missed that
cardboard cutout versions or the mini versions of the trophy in there as well.
I saw a lot of inflatable trophies that people were holding. Yeah.
Apparently, at least two Arsenal fans tried to sneak in as stewards. They tried to disguise themselves as if they were working for the stadium, and were properly thrown out for that. But,
thrown out, banned for life, arrested, some combination of those things.
I think they were. I think they were just kicked out of the stadium. I don't think it was anything more than, because I think the sense was, all right, these are just two jokers who are trying to celebrate. Like this isn't anything weird.
Incidentally, I noticed, I don't know what made it stand out to me this most recent time, but at the Crystal Palace match, I noticed all the stewards have those bright yellow vests that they wear, right? And they each have like numbers on them, and I guess that's so like I'm guessing if there's video footage of an incident, they can identify which steward was involved or something. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure it's part of the same reason that anyone has an identification number, like it helps track who's there and who's where. Yeah. I imagine those numbers it wouldn't surprise me if those numbers are tied to those people, or if it's part of identification system or something.
Yeah. So ultimately, there isn't too much to talk about with this match. I mean, we'd already won the league by that point. We racked up another win. We went 7 points clear of Manchester City by the time Aston Villa beat them, and we won here. But the lineup was probably the one thing worth talking about. So we saw Max Dowman start. That was pretty cool.
Yes, Max Dowman start. He is now officially the youngest player ever to start a Premier League game. Remember, his other appearances in the league have been off the bench. He did get a start in one of the cups, I think in the FA Cup. He also did, by the way, became the youngest player ever to win the Premier League.
Okay.
So just he's 16 years old. Anyway.
Yeah. So then, before all was said and done, we saw Gabriel Jesus. He started. He scored for us. Not a bad performance from him. He had a couple really close calls before he ended up scoring right before halftime. It's not bad from him. About what we've come to expect this season, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy. I mean, you think about it. First of all, this all felt a little bit swan songish for Jesus, that this was kind of going to be it for him, which I think is right. I mean, you sort of think about how he kind of transformed the club when he came in, kind of the extra level he brought. I believe it was your first season, right? 22-23, leading into the World Cup.
Yeah.
And then, of course, obviously how much he was hurt by the injury, not just the physical pain, but his career was hurt and some of the subsequent injuries he had.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that he's just not, and we saw a little bit of the good and bad. He had a few opportunities that he probably should have done better with, but ultimately he's able to get the goal, which is great to see. And, was the captain coming out for the opener to open the game. Especially during the guard of honor that we got, which especially nice because Palace's entrance is off in the corner, not one of those like right there, right in front of the, right on the sidelines, so off the corner. So they got a nice long walk in.
I didn't actually get to see that. It was on the Telemundo. You watched live. I watched the replay. I think it may have been edited, or at least largely edited out. I think I saw that.
Well, because I was like trying to scramble and figure out where the game actually was. So by the time I turned it on, it was already like a minute or two in. So I think, but I saw a replay of that. So
okay, yeah,
but yeah. This was definitely a lineup that said we have other things on our minds. Which, by the way, is the same thing for Crystal Palace, who, of course, as of today, earlier today, won the Europa Conference League. So obviously that was.
The right call on their part, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, to the extent a game doesn't really matter, this is about as close as it would have got when you get to a game that doesn't really matter in the league, especially a game containing the champions,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So at halftime, it was interesting. So the Telemundo broadcast did not have a traditional halftime show. It was just basically a recap of the contenders for goal of the year. And so seeing this, I actually did watch. I typically skip over the halftime show most of the time, unless there's something really shocking or puzzling that happened in the first half and I want to hear some analysis of it. But so I watched it, and it struck me, not only Martin Zubamendi's one goal where he kind of just like, it was volleying toward him and he just like bent over and like sent it in, that was on there. But I noticed, I forget if it was 2 or 3 of the other 6 or so contenders for goal of the year were against Arsenal. And we called those out at the time, the Szoboszlai goal. I forget what the other one was, but these were like, it makes sense, right? Like we were playing at a level, and especially at a defensive level, that inspires those kinds of moments from other teams. That's what they had to do to beat us.
Yeah, I think I took a shower during halftime, so I just did.
It was very early for you. And I think Tyler Adams has one of the contenders for Bournemouth, American player. So that was cool to see.
So it's Wappingers Falls own Royce Ketchum, high school graduate Tyler Adams.
Yes.
Which you and I might be the only people connected to the show who know that reference, but.
Yeah. But yeah, whenever we see his cards in the box of the trading card store, we always grab them. So overall, though, we watched the match to be able to watch the trophy being lifted after. And I was in the position, because I was watching the replay later on, about 12 hours shifted. I was starting to watch. I skipped past a whole bunch of stuff in between, like the end of the Spurs Everton match. They came so close. Everton came so close to not letting them win it. But anyway, I skipped a bunch, and then I'm watching all this and hearing the Spanish language commentators. I'm like, wait a second, this has already happened. Why am I doing this? And I just went to YouTube and watched Arsenal's video they posted of the trophy celebration. So yeah, it was great. Really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, there was a bit of a delay in that, partly because this was Crystal Palace's final home game and also in advance of their European final. So there was a little bit of post-game stuff from them. I think the manager gave a speech. The players did a lap of honor. So there was some quote-unquote delay, which really was Palace going through their post-game. And apparently Arsenal was like, yeah, sure, go ahead, do your thing. The players, Arsenal wore the white kits for the game, but then disappeared into the locker room. And I don't know if they went to the locker room or if they were just brought out to them. Had their champions kits, the red with the champions in gold on the back, including
26, yep.
Apparently, David Raya came out wearing his gloves, which was kind of an interesting choice.
So did Kepa. Raya and Kepa came out wearing their gloves. Tommy Setford did not. Now, I don't know if that's just a reflection of his status or if maybe the two of them coordinated to do it together and just he wasn't in on the huddle.
Yeah, a pair of Spaniards, Who else was it? The other one, Mikel Arteta came out in a shirt, which, by the way, he looks like he could still play. He looks. I know he does not look any different from the guy who lifted the FA Cup with Arsenal a decade ago. That's really kind of interesting.
Yeah, he stays in shape. It was also interesting if you notice. So they were all the team. Arteta and I didn't notice, maybe one or two of his like closest assistant coaches were all wearing the red Champions 26 kits. But then when everybody, the whole extended staff joined in at the end, they were wearing the white kits. And they all had players' names and numbers on the back. And I wondered, did they just raid the supplies? Like, these are all the jerseys we didn't need for this match because they only wore one. They didn't need to change them out or whatever. These are just all the spares. Because it was just all players' jerseys. It was
without seeing the numbers, they could have been some of the guys on the field, too. They took it off. And so here...
Maybe. Well, yeah, exactly. But yeah, they all had Arsenal player names and numbers on them. So it was just one of those fun details. It's like, okay, well, it looked fine. It was...
But yeah, you get that moment with the trophy, thrusts it into the air.
Yeah,
and the confetti goes off.
It was a little weird how Odegaard did the shimmy and lift, and it made sense. And the confetti cannons went off like that. That was all fun. And then every other player did their own turn with the shimmy and lift, and it was just kind of like. It was a little absurd, but whatever. They're having fun, and I don't begrudge them. But
I mean, everyone. That's kind of the thing. Once it's done, everyone gets their few minutes with the trophy, and as I understand it, Arsenal will hold on to that trophy until the end of next season. At which point, it will go shortly before the end. It'll go back to the league in advance of whoever is going to win it. I remember reading this at some point. Apparently, the league has 2 trophies, and.
So it's actually the same physical trophies get handed around. I assume that they got to keep it on display, like in a trophy closet or not closet, but like a trophy case or something that they would put it on display.
I don't remember. They might get a replica. The league might give them a replica.
Okay.
But yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, they did get a special gold version for the Invincibles, which they have since kept. I believe the Champions League trophy they would give back, but I think if you get to keep it if you win it 5 times, I think is something.
So SNL gives you a special smoking jacket if you host 5 times. The Champions League lets you keep the trophy.
if you win it 5 times, yeah. It used to be. It was 3 times. The first team to win the World Cup 3 times. The original Jules Rimet trophy got to keep it. I think that was Brazil, but I believe it has since. Disappeared and no one knows where it is.
But yeah, so a fun time at Selhurst Park, all things considered. I'm sure Eza was happy the way that worked out, that he was able to celebrate there. Mixed feelings possibly, but all things considered, if he had to pick any place that wasn't the Emirates, probably his second choice, I would guess.
Yeah, it was a nice. I guess it was nice to be able to celebrate it in a place. I mean, I know everyone would kind of love to rub it in Spurs' face or things like that. I can get the appeal, but I think it was nice to be in a place like Palace where the vibes were going to be good. Like everyone was going to be. Palace fans were in a good mood too. So sure, let's applaud. What do they care?
Right. Who's your player of the week?
A hard one to talk about because, of course, the games were so very different, and obviously all the important stuff happened between them. I'm going to give a shout out to Bukayo Saka. I thought there are several guys I think who had really good games and good weeks, but I think the delivery on the corner ultimately was the goal that won the league. Mm-hmm. A tip of the hat to Jesus for his swan song of performance, leaving with a goal, probably leaving with a goal, but certainly his performance there. And also a special shout out Christian Norgard. He played one half of Premier League football this season, and he's a league champion. So good for him. So that's awesome. How about you? Who are you going on this?
It was similarly tough. I mean, when it's almost two different teams playing and you're trying to draw a common thread between them, it's rough. I mean, ultimately, I've got to hand it to Kai Havertz. He had the goal in the Burnley match and then goal involvement with a really beautiful, we didn't really talk much about the goals in Crystal Palace because, ultimately the game doesn't matter. But, it was a great flick backward that he got to Noni Madueke to finish, and just our 19th corner kick goal of the season, and well earned. We set the record that hopefully only we will break in the coming years, and we did well with it. So yeah, Kai Havertz, he's been looking good. This jersey that I'm wearing today, I think of as my Kai Havertz jersey. Like, he is the player that I think of wearing this highlighter kit, Let's see how he does in Budapest this weekend. Hopefully everybody's healthy and playing well, and we can start celebrating again. We're still top of the table. Wait, we're not top of the table. We won. We won the table.
We won the league. Feels good to keep saying it, doesn't it? We won the league.
It won't get old. Yeah.
Winning never gets old. So don't. But yes, we're going to finish on top, 7 points clear of Manchester City. Best goal difference in the league. Second most goals scored, by far the fewest goals allowed. Shout out to Arsenal, man. What a season they had in the league.
So that's the top of the table. How did everyone else do at the bottom end? Who ended up getting relegated? West Ham or Spurs?
Yeah, so that was really the drama for the final day. And at the end of the day, Tottenham won at home against Everton, confirming their spot in the Premier League for next season. 17th for the second year in a row. So it is West Ham that is going down. A lot of questions for both of those sides. Spurs at least gets to answer those questions in the Premier League. West Ham will have to go down to the Championship. You do fancy them to come back. But it's really easy to say that. It's another thing altogether to actually pull that off. So West Ham will join Burnley and Wolves down in the Championship next year. Replacing them will be the Championship champions, Coventry City, the runners-up, Ipswich Town, and the winners of the playoff, your Hull City Tigers.
All right.
Yeah,
I haven't seen them yet, so that'll be cool.
We sort of touched on that a little bit. That was the championship playoffs got weird. Southampton was actually set to play Hull, but was actually thrown out of the game as a result of the spying incident that we had kind of discussed. I'm a little surprised they went and did it. Apparently, they found a lot more evidence and have tied a lot of it back to the Southampton manager. So not only is Southampton was kicked out of the playoffs, they'll also start next year in the championship with a 4-point penalty.
Oh boy. Okay.
So Middlesbrough, though, ends up coming short, has plenty of questions for themselves about the one goal they scored in those 3 playoff games. But a goal in the 95th minute, Hull City coming into the Premier League. Arsenal's opponents in that FA Cup final back in 2014, when they finally broke their trophy drought at that point. Yeah, we'll have much more to say about the newcomers
Right.
really in August when we start getting set for next season. But congrats to Hull, and we'll see you and Spurs next season.
Yeah, so then what about in Europe? So as you mentioned, the Europa and Europa Conference Leagues had their finals, and I know England had teams in both. Who ended up winning? How'd they do?
Yeah, so Aston Villa cruised to victory over Freiburg, the German side, to win the Europa League. While for the third time in 4 years, an English team has won the Europa Conference League. Crystal Palace earlier today, Wednesday, beat Rayo Vallecano of Spain. So yeah, England is 2 for 2 when it comes to European trophies, and really this speaks to the depth of the Premier League. I mean, Aston Villa finished in 4th in the league, which is pretty good. It's Europa League quality victor. Crystal Palace won the Conference League, finishing 15th. And so at the top end, look, obviously we know about the quality that exists in Europe. Your Bayerns, your Barcelonas, your PSGs, like your top teams from the top leagues. The strength of the Premier League is in its depth. I mean, the 15th place team in La Liga is not winning a European trophy. Crystal Palace just did. And it speaks to the money in the Premier League and the depth and the challengers they're able to put out there. So England's 2 for 2 so far. Is 3 for 3 on the table.
On the table in our table talk segment. Yeah, that's fingers crossed. So how does that affect? I know we were talking about some crazy scenarios where you may have like a dozen English teams playing in Europe. How did that end up working out?
Well, when you say it like that, it makes you seem disappointed when you only have 9. That's right, 9 English teams in European competition next year. 5, the top 5, are headed to the Champions League: Arsenal, Manchester City, Manchester United, Aston Villa, and Liverpool. Right. The Europa League will see 3 teams, 6 and 7 in the league. That is Bournemouth and Sunderland. Plus the winner of the Europa Conference League, that's 15th place Crystal Palace. And then 1 team made their way to the Conference League next year. It should have been, or it would have been, the League Cup winners. That's Manchester City. Of course, they're going to the Champions League. That spot goes to the now 8th place team, Brighton and Hove Albion. By the way, I just named 9 English teams headed to Europe next year, and not one of them was Chelsea.
All right, Keith. So you sent me a link here to this is a Twitter, which I know it's technically X, and it's in our sign off. I always say Twitter. I don't like the name X. I refuse to repeat it, but it's in the URL. So, but anyway, a Twitter link to a video. I think you said what is this?
So this is just a little short from AFTV, the long time Arsenal fan TV, which we can talk about another time. The sort of the history of that group, but what it is one of their lead guys is in Budapest and appears to have his hands on next year's 3rd kit. How that happened, I don't know. But if you want to go ahead and take a quick look.
Okay, I'm hitting enter on the link, and so I'm looking. He's showing the view. Okay, great. Come on, get to it. All right, hold on. Ooh, yellow.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm pretty sure it's the. I think the 3rd is supposed to be the yellow. Hold on, I'll confirm.
Nice. So. Yeah. I know you've always told me about how yellow, and that yellow, not this yellow, is like one of Arsenal's classic like 3rd kit colors. Like they'll have like a blue kit and a yellow kit as the change kit colors. They have this is the closest we've gotten to that in the time I've been watching. That's exciting. I'm excited to get that with. I'm getting every jersey this year. I'm getting every jersey with the gold lion. Like I don't even care if I hate it. I'm getting every jersey with the gold lion. I love the keeper kit. Like that is going to be ordered once I know whether I'm getting the authentic or not. We talked about my experiment with that earlier. But yeah, nice. I like that. That's a great first impression on that one. It looks very much like the older one that I've seen in that color. It's nice. I like the pale yellow. It's not the one that you have is a more saturated yellow, not full on highlighter, but more of like a lemony yellow.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious a little bit It looks like a dark red collar, maybe some blue, the stripes, and I think the detailing is in blue. It's a little. I'd be curious to see what it looks like when they get the actual release and not just a small video.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I don't know that I like it enough to to pull the trigger on a purchase. But I'm also sitting with World Cup kits in my closet, so might be blowing up my kit budget, which is fine. But anyway. Yeah, not bad. Kind of interesting that they have the third at this point. But presumably the away kit's ready to go. You'll probably see that released after the World Cup as we get set for preseason, or as we get set for those preseason games.
It's got a subtle pattern in the fabric, the same as the kit that you're wearing, where it's got like I don't know what you call that, but there's like it's in the weave of the fabric. There's like a texture where it's like it causes a graphic pattern. It's very subtle, like diagonal stripes, which I like. I think it's very subtle, so it doesn't bother me. Like I think if those were actual like bold stripes in a contrasting color that you could see, I wouldn't like it. But yeah. Just the can. What's also interesting is the cannon with the Adidas 3 stripe logo, not the tri-leaf or whatever they call it that you've got on yours. More like this classic current. Well, I shouldn't say classic. Current Adidas logo that they typically go with, but the cannon has gone with the tri-leaf design more recently, so that's an interesting detail. But yeah, cool. I'm excited for that. What is coming up for this weekend? As if I didn't know what the answer is.
Here we go. One more left, and it's the big one. Not the big one, it's the biggest one. From Budapest, from the Puskás Arena, it is the Champions League final. Arsenal versus Paris Saint-Germain. It'll be on CBS. I mean, they're as good a team as we've played all season. It's I don't want to quite put it as like the final boss, in video game terms, but yeah, they're an outstanding team. We know, of course, we faced them last year in the Champions League semifinals. They won the trophy a year ago. They have also since recently wrapped up the French league. Big surprise. A talented team that is not just attacking talent. Last time we really talked about them was when they had won that bonkers 5-4 against Bayern in the first leg. Honestly, much more impressive was the second leg, which they won 1-0 by basically suffocating Bayern defensively. They're a team that can play defense too. Now we got blitzed by them in the early part of last year's semifinal. You avoid that. We generated plenty of chances and were stopped by Donnarumma. Look, at a one-off game, man, I think anything can go. I think it's a big benefit that we won the league, come in with a little confidence. I think it's a big benefit we won the league last week so that we were able to sort of take some time to decompress and relax. I think outside of Ben White, and we talked about long-term injuries, Mikel Merino played on Sunday. So he's ready to go if we need him. Jurrien Timber has supposedly practiced with the team. So we, by all accounts, will be coming to Budapest with them. So really, Ben White's the only absence that we know of for sure. I mean, it's gonna be a fantastic day. Honestly, I'm a little more nervous for this one than I was for the league. Obviously, I've talked about my history. 20 years ago, I was there watching when we came up just short against Barcelona. Man, listen, we're going to have the parade on Sunday. You and I are going to do a season wrap-up episode, I think, on Sunday as well. It's going to be a celebratory atmosphere. We are the Premier League champions. But as I said before, there might be a second trophy in that parade. And what a parade that would be. I think they could. I think they could. I hate making predictions. I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to do it, or I got to pick PSG. I'm not going to do that. But I think they can win.
Yeah.
And I think, I think all you can ask for is to walk into that game and say, we belong here. It would not be an upset if Arsenal won. So let's go, boys.
Thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to the podcast version of our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with the link in the show notes. And while you're there, you can do your homework and comment on one of our videos. We've been posting our full episode and then also each segment as we get to it. So news, for instance, each match, table talk, we post those as separate videos, so shorter videos for only those segments. So comment on one of them. Let us know what you think. Say hi, ask a question. We'd love to take listener, viewer questions on the show. So please do that. We'd love to hear from you. We record the show using Zencaster. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our socials. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
We all follow the Arsenal over land and sea.